In the heart of the Kingdom of Ethermore, where ancient traditions clash with modern realities, a single moment of chaos threatens to unravel centuries of royal protocol. When 10-year-old Princess Elara's desperate cries for help echo through the bulletproof glass of the royal convoy, Captain Marcus Vale faces an impossible choice that will define not only his career, but the very future of the monarchy itself. What started as a routine journey to the annual Harvest Festival becomes a heart-stopping race against time, where loyalty, duty, and a child's safety hang in the balance. Sometimes the greatest threats to a kingdom come not from external enemies, but from the shadows within the palace walls. This is the story of how one guard's split-second decision changed everything. The morning mist clung to the cobblestones of the royal palace courtyard as Captain Marcus Vale adjusted his ceremonial sword for the third time. 20 years of service to the crown had taught him that routine was everything, but today felt different. The air carried an electric tension that made his weathered hands twitch toward his weapon. Princess Elara bounded down the marble steps, her golden curls catching the early sunlight that filtered through the ancient oak trees surrounding the palace grounds. At 10 years old, she possessed the infectious energy that only royal children seem to maintain despite their rigid schedules and endless lessons in protocol. Her emerald dress, specially tailored for today's Harvest Festival, swished around her ankles as she practically skipped toward the waiting convoy. "Good morning, Captain Vale," she called out, her voice carrying the musical quality that reminded Marcus why he had dedicated his life to protecting this family. "Are you excited about the festival? Cook says there will be apple tarts the size of carriage wheels." Marcus couldn't help but smile, the stern lines of his face softening. "Good morning, Your Highness. I'm certain the festival will be everything you hope it will be." He bowed formally, though his eyes never stopped scanning the courtyard for potential threats. Queen Isabella emerged from the palace doors moments later, her regal bearing commanding immediate attention from the gathered staff. She moved with the grace that came from decades of public appearances, her sapphire gown flowing behind her like liquid starlight. Despite her composed exterior, Marcus noticed the slight tension around her eyes. Something was troubling the Queen, though she would never let it show in front of her daughter. Captain Vale, Queen Isabella, approached him with measured steps.
"I trust all security arrangements are in place for today's journey." "Yes, Your Majesty."
"The route has been cleared and secured. We have additional units positioned at strategic points along the way, and the local authorities have been briefed." Marcus straightened his shoulders. Princess Elara will be completely safe. The Queen's gaze lingered on her daughter, who was now chatting animatedly with one of the younger guards about the festival's traditional games. "See that she is, Captain. Recent intelligence suggests there may be those who wish to use today's public appearance for their own purposes." Before Marcus could ask for clarification, a commotion near the palace gates drew his attention. A black sedan was approaching at high speed, its windows tinted so dark that the occupants remained invisible. This wasn't part of the planned convoy. "Secure the princess," Marcus commanded, his hand moving instinctively to his radio. Unknown vehicle approaching from the east gate. The palace guards immediately formed a protective circle around Princess Elara, who looked confused but not frightened. Years of security drills had taught her to trust the guards completely, though she had never experienced a real threat. The sedan screeched to a halt just outside the main courtyard, and 3 figures emerged. Marcus recognized the lead figure immediately. Lord Chancellor Davidson, the Queen's most trusted advisor, though his usual composed demeanor had been replaced by obvious urgency. "Your Majesty," Chancellor Davidson called out as he hurried across the courtyard, his formal robes billowing behind him. "Forgive the dramatic entrance, but we've received word of a potential security threat. Intelligence indicates that radical elements within the noble reform movement may attempt to disrupt today's festival." Queen Isabella's composure never wavered, though Marcus caught the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw. "What kind of disruption are we discussing, Chancellor?" "They may attempt to create a situation that would embarrass the crown publicly, perhaps stage a protest during your speech, or worse, attempt to get close to the princess during the meet-and-greet portion of the event." Chancellor Davidson glanced nervously at Princess Elara, who was still surrounded by her protective detail. "I strongly recommend postponing the appearance until we can neutralize this threat." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The annual Harvest Festival had been a royal tradition for over 2 centuries. Cancelling now would send ripples of concern throughout the kingdom, and potentially give the very radical elements they feared exactly what they wanted, a sign that the monarchy could be intimidated. "Absolutely not," Queen Isabella declared, her voice carrying the authority of generations of rulers. "We will not allow fear to dictate royal obligations. The people of Ethermore depend on this tradition, especially the farming communities who have worked so hard this season. Captain Vale, Are you confident in your security preparations?
Marcus nodded firmly. Yes, Your Majesty.
We can handle any civilian disruptions, and the convoy route has been thoroughly secured. However, I would recommend modifying our approach to the festival grounds. How so? The Queen asked. Instead of the traditional open carriage for the final approach, I suggest we use the armored vehicle for the entire journey. It's less ceremonial, but it provides complete protection while still allowing the princess to be seen by the people through the reinforced windows. Princess Alara, who had been listening despite the guard's attempts to distract her, stepped forward. Mother, I don't mind riding in the armored car. Captain Vale always makes sure I'm safe, and I really want to see the harvest displays the children have prepared. The Queen smiled at her daughter's courage. Very well, we proceed as planned, but with Captain Vale's security modifications. She turned to the Chancellor. Have your intelligence sources provide Captain Vale with all available information about these potential threats. As the royal party prepared to depart, Marcus conducted a final inspection of the convoy. The lead vehicle contained 4 of his most experienced guards, followed by the armored royal transport and 2 additional security vehicles bringing up the rear. Local police had been positioned along the route, and plainclothes agents would be scattered throughout the festival grounds. Princess Ilara climbed into the armored vehicle with characteristic enthusiasm, pressing her face immediately against the reinforced windows to wave at the palace staff gathered to see them off. Queen Isabella settled beside her daughter with the composed elegance that had made her beloved by the people of Athemor. Captain Vale, the Queen said as he prepared to take his position in the front passenger seat, I want you to know that I have complete faith in your judgment. If you determine that we need to leave the festival early, or if any situation arises that concerns you, I trust you to act accordingly. Marcus nodded solemnly. Thank you, Your Majesty. I won't let anything happen to either of you. The convoy began its journey through the winding roads that led from the palace to the town of Millbrook, where the harvest festival was already in full swing. Princess Alara kept up a steady stream of excited chatter about the various attractions she hoped to see, while Queen Isabella reviewed her speech notes one final time. For the first hour of the journey, everything proceeded exactly as planned. The roads were clear, the security checkpoints reported no unusual activity, and the early autumn scenery provided a peaceful backdrop to their travel. Marcus began to relax slightly, thinking that perhaps the intelligence about potential threats had been overly cautious. That changed when they reached the halfway point of their journey. Captain, the voice of Sergeant Torres crackled through the radio from the lead vehicle. We've got a situation developing about 2 miles ahead. There's a crowd gathered at the Riverside Bridge checkpoint, much larger than expected. Marcus grabbed his binoculars and leaned forward in his seat. Through the trees ahead, he could see an unusually large gathering of people near the bridge that crossed the Millbrook River. While crowds were expected along the route, this group seemed different, more agitated, with several individuals holding signs that he couldn't quite read from this distance. Your Majesty, Marcus turned to address the Queen, we may need to take the alternate route through the countryside. There appears to be a larger crowd than anticipated at our next checkpoint. Queen Isabella looked up from her speech. How much larger? I'd estimate about 200 people instead of the expected 50 or 60 well-wishers. It could be nothing, but given this morning's intelligence briefing, I'd prefer not to take chances. Princess Alara pressed her face against the window, trying to see what had captured the adults' attention. Are those people waiting to see us? They seem very excited. Before anyone could answer, Sergeant Torres's voice came through the radio again, this time with obvious concern. Captain, you need to see this. The crowd is definitely organized. They have coordinated banners and some of them are blocking the roadway. Recommend we halt the convoy and reassess. Marcus immediately ordered the convoy to stop. Through his binoculars, he could now clearly see that this wasn't a group of festival-goers waiting to catch a glimpse of royalty. The signs they carried bore slogans demanding democratic reform and end royal privilege. While peaceful protest was perfectly legal in Athemor, the timing and location suggested this was the disruption Chancellor Davidson had warned them about. Your Majesty, I strongly recommend we take the country route. This group appears to be part of the noble reform movement, and while they seem peaceful, I don't want to risk any confrontation with Princess Alara present. Queen Isabella studied the distant crowd through her own small pair of opera glasses. I see. Yes, let's take the alternate route. The festival is more important than dealing with political theatre today. As Marcus radioed the change in plans to the entire convoy, none of them noticed the lone figure watching from the hillside overlooking their current position. Armed with a high-powered radio and a detailed map of all possible routes to Millbrook, This observer immediately began transmitting new coordinates to other members of their organization. The alternate route would take them through the scenic countryside, adding about 20 minutes to their journey, but avoiding any potential confrontation. As the convoy turned onto the winding country road, Princess Ilara was delighted by the change in scenery. Rolling hills covered in the golden colors of autumn stretched out on both sides, dotted with farmhouses and fields where the harvest was still being gathered. "Look, Mother!" Princess Ilara pointed excitedly at a group of children playing in a farmyard. "Can we stop and say hello? They probably don't often see the royal convoy. Perhaps on the way back, darling." "We don't want to be late for the festival opening ceremony," Queen Isabella replied, though she too smiled at the pastoral scene. Marcus was less enchanted by the countryside. The alternate route offered fewer security advantages, more places for potential threats to hide, less backup from local authorities, and longer response times if anything went wrong. He found himself checking his radio every few minutes and scanning the horizon for any signs of unusual activity. His vigilance proved justified when they reached the small village of Ferndale, about 10 miles from their destination. As the convoy slowed to navigate the narrow streets of the historic village, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. More protesters. Not as many as at the bridge, but definitely organized and clearly waiting for them. About 30 people lined the main street through Ferndale, all carrying signs with similar slogans to what they had seen earlier. How had they known about the route change? "Someone's been tracking our movements." Marcus spoke quietly into his radio so as not to alarm the royal passengers. "All units stay alert." "This is no coincidence." Sergeant Torres responded immediately. "Understood, Captain. Should we push through or find another route?" Marcus quickly calculated their options. They were running out of alternate routes, and any further delays would significantly impact the festival schedule. The crowd in Ferndale, while clearly part of the same movement, seemed smaller and less aggressive than the group at the bridge. "We proceed through, but slowly and carefully. If anyone approaches the vehicle or attempts to block our path, we stop immediately." As the convoy moved through Ferndale's main street, Princess Ilara watched the protesters with curious interest rather than fear. "What are those signs about, Captain Vale?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "Some people have different opinions about how the kingdom should be governed, Your Highness. In Ethermore, people are free to express their views peacefully." "But they don't look very happy," Princess Ilara observed. "Maybe we could stop and talk to them." "Mother always says that listening to people is one of a ruler's most important duties." Queen Isabella reached over and gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "You're absolutely right, Ilara. And that's exactly what we'll be doing at the festival today. We'll have time to meet with people and hear their concerns during the afternoon audience sessions." The convoy successfully passed through Ferndale without incident, though Marcus noticed several of the protesters speaking urgently into cell phones as they drove by. His unease continued to grow as they approached the final stretch of road leading to Millbrook. The festival grounds came into view just as the village church bells chimed 11 o'clock. From a distance, everything looked exactly as it should. Colorful banners stretched between the trees, vendor booths lined the main pathways, and hundreds of families were already enjoying the various attractions and displays. Princess Ilara clapped her hands together in delight. "Oh, it looks wonderful. I can see the giant pumpkin display from here. And is that a carousel?" Even Queen Isabella seemed to relax as they approached the festival entrance, where local officials and festival organizers waited to greet them. The sight of normal families enjoying a traditional celebration was exactly what they had hoped for, a reminder of the positive aspects of royal traditions and their connection to the people of Ethermore. Marcus, however, couldn't shake his growing concern about how easily the protesters had tracked their movements. As the convoy pulled into the secured area behind the main festival platform, he made a decision that would prove crucial in the hours to come. "Sergeant Torres, I want additional sweeps of the festival grounds. Something about today feels orchestrated, and I don't believe those protesters were acting independently." "Yes, sir." "How thorough do you want these sweeps?" "Complete. Check every vendor, every volunteer, every staff member. If someone doesn't belong here, I want to know about it." As Princess Ilara prepared to make her first public appearance of the day, none of them realized that the most dangerous part of their journey was yet to come, and that the real test of Captain Marcus Vale's dedication to protecting the royal family was still hours away. The festival grounds buzzed with an energy that immediately lifted Princess Ilara's spirits as she stepped out of the armored vehicle. The autumn air carried the rich scents of cinnamon, roasted chestnuts, and apple cider, while the sounds of laughter and traditional folk music created a joyful atmosphere that seemed to wash away the morning's tension. Captain Marcus Vale maintained his professional alertness, even as he watched the princess's face light up at the sight of the elaborate harvest displays. Local farmers had outdone themselves this year, creating intricate sculptures from pumpkins, cornstalks, and autumn leaves that transformed the festival grounds into a wonderland of seasonal celebration. "Welcome to Millbrook, Your Majesty." Mayor Patricia Thornbury approached with a warm smile, her ceremonial sash gleaming in the midday sun. She had served the town for 15 years and had hosted the royal family's festival visits many times before. "Princess Alara, we have some very special surprises for you this year, including a maze made entirely from hay bales that the local children helped design." Queen Isabella graciously accepted the mayor's greeting while Marcus's trained eyes continued scanning the crowd. Despite the festive atmosphere, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The protesters' ability to anticipate their route changes suggested a level of coordination that went beyond simple political demonstration. "Sergeant Torres," he spoke quietly into his radio, "what's the status on those additional security sweeps?" "Still in progress, Captain. We've identified 3 individuals who don't appear on any of the vendor or volunteer lists, but they're maintaining distance and haven't approached the royal party. Could be journalists or curious onlookers." Princess Hilara tugged gently on her mother's sleeve. "Mother, may I go see the children's art display? Mrs. Henderson from the village school sent me a letter about the paintings they made specially for today." Queen Isabella looked to Marcus, who nodded after a quick assessment of the area. The children's display was located in a section of the grounds with excellent sightlines and only one entrance, making it ideal from a security standpoint. "Of course, darling. Captain Vale will escort you while I review the afternoon schedule with Mayor Thornbury." As they walked toward the children's display area, Princess Alara chatted enthusiastically with Marcus about the various attractions they passed. Despite his focus on security, Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying her commentary on the giant vegetables competition and her detailed analysis of which farmer deserved to win the award for most creative scarecrow. "Captain Vale," Princess Alara said as they approached a booth where local teenagers were demonstrating traditional weaving techniques. "Do you think those people in Ferndale were very upset about something? They seemed sad more than angry." Marcus considered his response carefully. Princess Alara was remarkably perceptive for her age, and he had learned over the years that honest, age-appropriate answers served her better than vague reassurances. "Some people believe that our kingdom should make certain changes to how it operates, Your Highness." "They're exercising their right to express those beliefs peacefully. It's actually a sign that Ethamore is a healthy democracy, where different opinions are welcomed. But they still want Mother to be queen, don't they? I believe most people in Ethamore love and respect your mother very much. Sometimes people disagree about the details of how things should work, but that doesn't mean they don't appreciate the royal family's service to the kingdom." Princess Alara seemed satisfied with this explanation and turned her attention to the children's art display, where dozens of colorful paintings depicting autumn scenes and royal portraits were arranged on easels throughout a small grove of maple trees.
"Your Highness!" A group of children from the local elementary school rushed toward her with barely contained excitement.
Their teacher, Mrs. Henderson, followed close behind with an apologetic smile. "Children, remember what we practiced about appropriate greetings for royalty," Mrs. Henderson gently reminded them. Princess Alara laughed and immediately put the children at ease. "Oh, please don't worry about all that formal stuff. I want to hear about your paintings. Did you really make all of these yourselves?" For the next 20 minutes, Marcus watched as Princess Alara engaged with each child individually, asking detailed questions about their artwork and listening intently to their explanations. Her genuine interest and natural warmth created exactly the kind of positive interaction between the royal family and their subjects that made these public appearances so valuable. It was while observing this heartwarming scene that Marcus noticed the first sign of real trouble. A man in his 30s, wearing the standard festival volunteer badge, was moving through the crowd in a pattern that immediately caught Marcus's attention. Instead of focusing on the children or the art display like everyone else in the area, this individual kept his eyes fixed on Princess Ilara while maintaining a consistent distance of about 20 feet. Marcus activated his radio discreetly. "Sergeant Torres, I need immediate background check on a male volunteer, approximately 35 years old, brown hair, blue jacket, positioned northeast of the children's display area." "Copy that, Captain. Stand by." Marcus continued watching the suspicious individual while keeping his expression neutral. Years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and every instinct was now telling him that this person represented a potential threat. "Captain?" Torres's voice crackled through his earpiece. "That individual is not on any of our volunteer lists. Badge appears to be counterfeit. Do you want us to approach? Negative. Continue observing but maintain distance. I don't want to cause a scene while Princess Alara is engaged with the children. Marcus smoothly repositioned himself to place his body between Princess Alara and the suspicious individual, while simultaneously scanning the area for additional threats. His movement caught the attention of the fake volunteer, who immediately began moving away toward the main festival area. He's on the move, Marcus reported quietly, heading toward the food vendor section. We're tracking him, Captain. Should we intercept? Before Marcus could respond, Princess Ilara appeared at his side, having finished her tour of the art display. Captain Vale, the children invited me to try the apple bobbing contest. May I participate? Mrs. Henderson says it's perfectly safe. Marcus found himself in the challenging position of wanting to maintain the princess's enjoyment while dealing with a potential security threat. The apple bobbing area was well within the secured perimeter, and keeping her engaged in supervised activities would actually make protection easier. Of course, Your Highness, lead the way. As they moved toward the apple bobbing station, Marcus kept one eye on Princess Alara, and the other on his team's pursuit of the suspicious individual. The festival crowd was growing larger as the afternoon progressed, making surveillance more difficult, but also providing better cover for his security personnel. Princess Alara's participation in the apple bobbing contest drew a crowd of delighted onlookers, all eager to watch royalty engage in such a traditionally humble activity. Her laughter echoed across the festival grounds as she struggled to capture an apple with her teeth, emerging from the water barrel with her hair dripping and her cheeks flushed with excitement. "I got one," she announced proudly, holding up a large red apple. "Did you see that, Captain Vale?" "Very impressive, Your Highness. You have excellent technique." It was at this moment of celebration that Marcus noticed Queen Isabella approaching with Mayor Thornbury and several other local officials. Behind them, however, was a group of individuals who immediately set off every alarm in Marcus's experienced mind. 3 people in business attire were walking with the royal party, but their positioning and movement patterns indicated they were not part of the planned entourage. More concerning was the fact that one of them bore a striking resemblance to the fake volunteer who had just been tracked to the food vendor area. "Torres, we may have a coordinated situation developing. Are you still tracking our suspect?" "Negative, Captain. We lost him in the crowd near the kettle corn stand, but we've identified 2 additional individuals who appear to be working together, moving toward your position." Marcus's mind raced through his options. He could immediately extract Princess Ilara from the situation, but that would cause a public scene and potentially panic the festival crowd. Alternatively, he could allow the situation to develop while maintaining heightened alert status, ready to act if any clear threat emerged. Queen Isabella reached the apple bobbing area with her escort, and Marcus immediately noticed the tension in her posture despite her smiling public demeanor. Whatever conversation she had been having with the unknown individuals had not been entirely pleasant. "Elara, you look like you've been having a wonderful time," Queen Isabella said, embracing her daughter despite her sobby condition. "I hope you thank Mrs. Henderson and the children for sharing their festival activities with you." "Oh yes, Mother. They taught me the proper technique for apple bobbing, and I even won this beautiful apple. Can we take it back to the palace and have Cook make it into a tart?" "That sounds like a lovely idea," Queen Isabella replied, though Marcus noticed her eyes kept darting toward the 3 individuals who had accompanied her to the apple bobbing area. Mayor Thornbury stepped forward with obvious nervousness. "Your Majesty, these gentlemen represent the Citizens Advisory Committee. They've requested a brief audience to discuss some concerns about recent agricultural policies." Marcus immediately understood the situation. This was not a chance encounter, but rather a carefully orchestrated attempt to corner the Queen in a public setting where refusing to listen would appear dismissive and potentially damage the royal family's reputation. "I appreciate their interest in agricultural policy," Queen Isabella replied diplomatically. "But today is designated for festival activities and community celebration. I would be happy to schedule a formal meeting at the palace to discuss their concerns in detail." The lead member of the delegation, a tall man with graying hair and an expensive suit that seemed out of place at a harvest festival, stepped forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Your Majesty, we understand your busy schedule, but our concerns are time-sensitive and directly relate to policies affecting the farming communities gathered here today. Surely a few minutes of your time would demonstrate the royal family's commitment to hearing all voices in our kingdom." Marcus recognized this as a classic manipulation tactic designed to put the Queen in a position where refusing would seem uncaring toward the very people the festival was meant to celebrate. However, his security instincts told him that this encounter was part of a larger plan that likely involved the morning's protesters and the suspicious individuals his team had been tracking. "Gentlemen," Marcus interjected smoothly, "Her Majesty has a published schedule for today's events that includes designated time for public audiences. If you would like to submit your concerns through proper channels, I'm certain they will receive appropriate attention."
The delegation leader's smile became more forced. "Captain Vale, I presume?"
We're simply exercising our rights as citizens to petition our monarchy directly.
"There's nothing inappropriate about our request." Princess Ilara, still holding her prize apple, looked back and forth between the adults with growing confusion. The festive atmosphere had suddenly become tense, and she could sense that something important was happening even if she didn't understand the details. "Mother," she said quietly, "are these the people who were holding signs earlier?" The question hung in the air for a moment before Queen Isabella answered. "No, darling, these are different people with different concerns. Why don't you show Captain Vale the prize booth while I speak with these gentlemen for just a moment?"
Marcus found himself facing another difficult decision.
His instincts told him not to leave the Queen alone with these individuals, but Princess Ilara's safety was his primary responsibility. The presence of unknown actors throughout the festival grounds made the situation increasingly unpredictable.
"Your Majesty," he said carefully, "perhaps it would be better if we all moved to the VIP tent where you can speak more privately with these gentlemen, while Princess Ilara enjoys some refreshments."
It was a compromise that would keep both royal family members within his immediate protection, while providing a more controlled environment for whatever this delegation actually wanted to discuss.
The VIP tent had been set up near the main festival platform, with clear sightlines in all directions and only two entrances that were easily monitored by his security team. As they made their way across the festival grounds, Marcus noticed that the crowd seemed different now, more organized, with clusters of individuals who appeared to be paying more attention to the royal party than to the festival activities. "Torres," he spoke into his radio, "I need a full crowd assessment. Something's changed since we arrived." "Already on it, Captain. We've identified at least a dozen individuals throughout the grounds who appear to be coordinating their movements. No weapons detected, but definitely organized surveillance." As they entered the VIP tent, Marcus positioned himself where he could observe both entrances while keeping Princess Ilara within arm's reach. Queen Isabella graciously offered the delegation seats while Mayor Thornbury nervously attempted to maintain the pretense that this was a normal diplomatic interaction. "Now then, gentlemen," Queen Isabella began, "what specific agricultural policies would you like to discuss?" The delegation leader pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Your Majesty, we represent farming cooperatives throughout the kingdom who are gravely concerned about the proposed Environmental Conservation Act. The new regulations would severely impact traditional farming methods and threaten the livelihoods of families who have worked these lands for generations." Marcus listened to the beginning of what was clearly going to be a lengthy political discussion while simultaneously monitoring radio chatter from his security team. The situation outside the tent was becoming increasingly complex, with more suspicious individuals being identified throughout the festival grounds. Princess Ilara, meanwhile, had found a comfortable chair near the tent's viewing window where she could watch the festival activities while nibbling on fresh cookies provided by the festival organizers. Her contentment with the arrangement allowed Marcus to focus more fully on the developing security situation. "Captain," Torres's voice was urgent in his earpiece, "we've got a problem. 3 vehicles just arrived at the festival perimeter, not part of our convoy or local security. Occupants unknown, but they're remaining in their vehicles and appear to be monitoring radio frequencies." The complexity of the situation was escalating rapidly. What had begun as a simple protest demonstration was clearly part of a much more sophisticated operation designed to trap the royal family in a compromised position. Marcus began mentally preparing contingency plans for immediate evacuation, while hoping that the situation wouldn't deteriorate to that point. The delegation's presentation continued, with charts and statistics about farming yields and economic impacts. But Marcus noticed that they kept glancing toward the tent entrances as if expecting something. Whatever was happening here was building towards some kind of climax, and he intended to be ready for it. The tension in the VIP tent grew thicker with each passing minute as the agricultural delegation continued their presentation. Captain Marcus Vale found himself dividing his attention between the increasingly complex political discussion and the concerning radio reports from his security team stationed throughout the festival grounds. Queen Isabella maintained her characteristic composure, listening attentively to the farmers' concerns while occasionally asking thoughtful questions about specific impacts of the proposed Environmental Conservation Act. However, Marcus could detect the subtle signs of stress in her posture, the slight stiffening of her shoulders, the way her fingers occasionally drummed silently against her chair arm. Princess Alara had become absorbed in watching a puppet show performance visible through the tent window, occasionally giggling at the colorful characters' antics. Her innocent enjoyment of the festival activities provided a stark contrast to the adult tension swirling around her. Your Majesty, the delegation leader continued, spreading another chart across the table. These projections show that implementation of the new regulations could reduce agricultural output by up to 30% in some regions. We're not simply talking about economic inconvenience. This could threaten food security for the entire kingdom. Marcus noticed that despite the gravity of their concerns, the delegation members kept checking their watches and glancing toward the tent entrances. Their behavior pattern suggested they were operating on some kind of timeline, which only increased his suspicion that this encounter was part of a coordinated plan. Torres, he spoke quietly into his radio. Status update on those vehicles at the perimeter. Still there, Captain. We've run the license plates, all registered to shell companies with addresses that don't exist. Local police are requesting permission to approach and investigate. Negative on the approach for now. We don't want to escalate the situation while the royal family is exposed. Continue monitoring and be ready for immediate extraction if necessary. Queen Isabella was responding to the farmer's concerns with her usual diplomatic skill. Gentlemen, I understand your worry about these regulations, and I appreciate you bringing specific data to support your position. However, the Environmental Conservation Act was developed in consultation with agricultural experts specifically to balance environmental protection with farming sustainability. Perhaps we could arrange for your cooperatives to meet directly with the Ministry of Agriculture to address these specific projections. The delegation leader's expression hardened slightly. Your Majesty, with respect, the Ministry of Agriculture has been unresponsive to our previous attempts at dialogue. We believe the royal family's direct intervention is necessary to protect rural communities from policies that will destroy their way of life. Marcus detected a shift in tone that set off alarm bells in his mind. This was no longer a respectful petition, but was beginning to sound like a demand. His hand moved instinctively toward his radio as he prepared to signal for immediate backup.
Mother! Princess Alara called from her position by the window. There are more people gathering near the main stage.
Are they preparing for another performance? Queen Isabella looked toward the window, and Marcus immediately followed her gaze. Through the clear panels, they could see that a significant crowd had indeed gathered in the main festival area. But this wasn't the scattered, relaxed gathering of families enjoying autumn activities. This crowd was organized, with many individuals holding signs and banners that had clearly been prepared in advance. Torres, what's happening at the main stage area?
Captain, we've got approximately 200 protesters moving into position around the festival grounds.
They're carrying signs about agricultural reform and royal accountability. Appears to be the same group we encountered this morning, but larger. Marcus felt the pieces of a carefully orchestrated trap falling into place around them. The morning's protests had been designed to force them onto the alternate route, where additional surveillance could track their movements. The fake volunteer at the children's display had been gathering intelligence about their position and timing. Now this delegation was keeping the Queen occupied in the VIP tent, while protesters surrounded the festival grounds. Your Majesty, Marcus said urgently but quietly, I believe we need to cut this meeting short and return to the convoy immediately. Before Queen Isabella could respond, the delegation leader stood up abruptly. Captain Vale, that won't be necessary. We simply want Her Majesty to witness the genuine concerns of her people firsthand. Through the tent window, they could now see protesters moving closer to the VIP area, their chants becoming audible even through the tent walls. The signs they carried bore messages like, Royal family must address agricultural crisis, and no policy without farmer input. Princess Alara turned from the window with obvious confusion. Mother, why do all those people look upset? I thought today was supposed to be a happy celebration. Queen Isabella rose from her chair with regal dignity and tact despite the deteriorating situation. Sometimes, Alara, people use public events to express important concerns. It's part of living in a kingdom where people can speak freely about their beliefs. Marcus activated his radio for an emergency broadcast. All units implement immediate protective protocol. We have a coordinated demonstration surrounding the royal party. Prepare convoy for emergency departure. The delegation leader smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Your Majesty, there's no need for hasty departures. We simply want you to address the crowd directly, to hear their concerns and perhaps announce that you'll personally review the Environmental Conservation Act before it's implemented. I'm afraid that's not how policy review works in Ethermore, Queen Isabella replied firmly. Royal involvement in legislative processes follows specific constitutional protocols. I cannot make policy announcements at a harvest festival. The crowd outside had grown larger and more vocal, with chants of "Address the people" and "Royal accountability now" echoing across the festival grounds. Marcus could see that normal festival attendees, families with children, elderly couples, teenagers enjoying the activities, were becoming confused and concerned by the sudden change in atmosphere. "Torres, I need extraction options immediately. The crowd is getting larger and more agitated." "Working on it, Captain. The protesters have blocked the main access road, and those vehicles at the perimeter have moved to block secondary routes. We're looking for alternate extraction paths, but it's going to take some time to clear safe passage." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the full scope of what they were facing. This wasn't simply a political demonstration that had gotten out of hand. This was a carefully planned operation, designed to trap the royal family in a situation where they would be forced to make public concessions under pressure. "Your Majesty," the delegation leader continued, "hundreds of people have gathered here today specifically to hear your response to their concerns. Surely the Crown's commitment to serving the people includes listening when they speak with one voice." Princess Elara moved closer to her mother, clearly sensing the tension in the room even if she didn't understand its source. "Mother, are we going to talk to all those people?" "There seem to be so many of them." Queen Isabella placed a protective arm around her daughter while maintaining eye contact with the delegation leader. "Gentlemen, I appreciate the passion behind your concerns, but I will not be pressured into making policy statements under these circumstances. If you're truly interested in productive dialogue, you'll respect proper channels for addressing the monarchy." The sound of the crowd outside was becoming impossible to ignore, with hundreds of voices now chanting in unison. Marcus could see through the tent windows that local festival security and police were overwhelmed by the size and organization of the demonstration. "Captain Vale," Queen Isabella said clearly, "I believe it's time we return to the palace. Princess Elara has had a wonderful time at the festival, but we have other commitments this afternoon." Marcus nodded and immediately began coordinating with his team. "Torres, we need that extraction route now. The situation is escalating beyond our ability to control." "Captain, we've identified a service road behind the Festival Administration building that connects to County Route 7. If we can get the royal party to that building, we can bring the convoy around and avoid the main demonstration." "Understood. Begin moving the convoy to that position immediately." The delegation leader stepped closer, his previous diplomatic veneer completely gone. "Your Majesty, I don't think you understand the situation. These people aren't going to simply disperse because you want to leave. They've traveled from across the kingdom to be here today, and they deserve to hear their queen address their concerns directly." Marcus positioned himself between the delegation and the royal family. "Gentlemen, this meeting is concluded. You'll need to exit the tent immediately so we can proceed with our scheduled departure. I'm afraid we can't allow that, Captain Vale." The words hung in the air like a physical threat. Marcus felt time slow as his training kicked in, his mind immediately analyzing the tactical situation. 3 unknown individuals inside the tent with him, hundreds of protesters outside, blocked escape routes, and his primary responsibility, protecting Princess Elara. Sitting just a few feet away. "Torres, we have a hostage situation developing in the VIP tent. Implement Emergency Protocol 7 immediately." "Copy that, Captain. All units converging on your position." Princess Elara looked up at Marcus with wide eyes. "Captain Vale, what's happening? Why does everyone seem so serious?" Before Marcus could answer, one of the delegation members moved toward the tent entrance and spoke into a small radio device.
"This is Phoenix. Package is secure.
Proceed with Phase 2. The chanting outside suddenly became louder and more focused, with the crowd now clearly demanding that Queen Isabella appear on the festival's main stage to address their concerns. Marcus realized that the royal family had been maneuvered into exactly the position these organizers wanted, trapped in a public setting where any attempt to leave would appear to be ignoring legitimate citizen concerns. Queen Isabella's voice remained steady, despite the circumstances. "I assume you gentlemen are not actually representatives of agricultural cooperatives." The delegation leader smiled again. "We represent the people of Athermore, who believe that the monarchy should be directly accountable to its subjects. Today provides an excellent opportunity to demonstrate that accountability." Marcus made a split-second decision that would define everything that followed. Rather than wait for the situation to deteriorate further, he would take immediate action to protect the royal family, even if it meant confronting 3 potentially dangerous individuals while responsible for Princess Ilara's safety. "Your Majesty, Princess Ilara, please move to the back corner of the tent immediately. As the royal family repositioned, Marcus spoke clearly into his radio. All units, we have confirmed hostile actors in direct contact with the royal family. Authorization for immediate response.
The delegation leader raised his hand.
Captain Vale, there's no need for dramatics. We're not armed, and we have no intention of harming anyone. We simply want Queen Isabella to walk onto that stage and announce that she will personally review the Environmental Conservation Act before it becomes law. And, if Her Majesty refuses, then she'll remain here until she reconsiders. The people of Athenamore have waited long enough for their voices to be heard. Marcus felt a surge of anger at the implied threat to the royal family, but he forced himself to remain calm and professional. Years of training had prepared him for exactly this type of situation, where political manipulation attempted to use the royal family as pawns in a larger game. Torres, what's the status on that extraction route? Convoy is in position, Captain. But we need to get the royal family out of the tent and across approximately 50 yards of open ground to reach the pickup point. With this size crowd, that's going to be extremely challenging. Marcus studied the tent's layout, looking for any tactical advantages he could use. The tent had 2 entrances, multiple windows, and a canvas construction that could be cut if necessary. His immediate priority was creating separation between the royal family and the hostile actors, while calling for backup to neutralize the broader threat. Princess Ilara, despite the tension surrounding her, maintained the remarkable composure that seemed to be inherited by all members of the royal family. Captain Vale, are these people trying to hurt Mother and me? Marcus knelt down to her level, speaking with the calm authority that had always reassured her during security drills. No, Your Highness. These people have concerns they want to discuss with your mother, but they're going about it the wrong way. I'm going to make sure you and Queen Isabella stay completely safe while we sort this out. The sound of approaching sirens could now be heard in the distance, indicating that local law enforcement was responding to the situation. However, Marcus knew that with hundreds of protesters surrounding the festival grounds, it would take significant time for police to establish control and create safe passage for the royal family. Your Majesty, the delegation leader said, checking his watch again, you have approximately 10 minutes to make your decision. After that point, the crowd outside may become less patient with waiting for your response. Queen Isabella's expression hardened with royal determination. Sir, I have served the people of Athenamore faithfully for over 20 years. I will not be threatened or coerced into abandoning constitutional processes, regardless of the consequences to myself. However, I will not allow my daughter to be used as leverage in your political scheme. She turned to Marcus with absolute trust in her eyes. Captain Vale, please get Princess Ilara to safety. I will handle this situation. It was at this moment that Marcus faced the most difficult decision of his career, whether to divide his protection between mother and daughter, or to focus entirely on getting Princess Ilara away from immediate danger while leaving the Queen in a potentially hostile situation. The weight of Queen Isabella's request hung heavy in the air of the VIP tent, as Captain Marcus Vale faced the most challenging moment of his 20-year career. Every fiber of his training screamed that he should never separate from either member of the royal family. Yet the tactical reality of their situation demanded an impossible choice. Princess Ilara looked between her mother and Marcus with the intuitive understanding that children often possess during crisis moments. Despite being only 10 years old, she seemed to grasp that something fundamental was shifting in the world around her. Mother, she said quietly, I want to stay with you. Queen Isabella knelt beside her daughter, her royal composure masking the fear that Marcus could detect in her eyes. Ella, sometimes we have to do things that seem scary, but are actually the safest choice. Captain Vale is going to take you somewhere safe while I finish talking with these gentlemen. The delegation leader checked his watch again, his impatience becoming more obvious. Your Majesty, the crowd is expecting an appearance soon. Every minute you delay makes the situation more difficult to control. Marcus activated his radio for a private channel to Sergeant Torres. Torres, I need immediate tactical assessment. Can we extract both royals simultaneously, or do we need to prioritize Princess Ilara? Captain, with the crowd size and organization, simultaneous extraction carries significant risk of injury to both targets. However, leaving Queen Isabella isolated also presents unacceptable risk levels. Marcus felt the familiar calm that came over him during crisis situations, his mind automatically shifting into tactical analysis mode. Years of emergency training had prepared him for scenarios where standard protocols would be insufficient, where improvisation and split-second decisions could mean the difference between success and catastrophe. Your Majesty, he said, moving closer to Queen Isabella, I have a proposal. We create a diversion that draws attention away from this tent while secretly extracting Princess Ilara. Once she's secure, I return immediately to handle your situation.
Queen Isabella considered this for a moment, her sharp intelligence quickly grasping the tactical implications.
What kind of diversion? Torres, are you monitoring this channel? Yes, Captain.
I need you to have 2 team members approach the main demonstration area in full uniform and request to speak with crowd leaders about setting up a proper audience platform for Queen Isabella. That should focus attention away from the VIP tent. The delegation leader had been listening to this exchange with growing agitation. Captain Vale, there will be no secret departures and no delay tactics. Queen Isabella will address the crowd from the existing festival stage in the next 5 minutes, or the situation will escalate beyond anyone's ability to control it. Marcus studied the 3 men more carefully, noting details he had missed during the initial crisis assessment. While they claimed to represent agricultural interests, their clothing was expensive, their posture suggested professional training rather than farming backgrounds, and, most tellingly, they showed no signs of the nervousness that would be natural for ordinary citizens holding royalty against their will. Torres, he said into his radio, run complete background checks on our 3 delegation members immediately. I don't believe they're who they claim to be. Princess Ilara moved closer to Marcus, her small hand finding his larger one. Captain Vale, are we going to have to run through the crowd like in the adventure stories? Despite the tension of the situation, Marcus couldn't help but smile at her question. Princess Ilara had always been fascinated by tales of royal adventures, never imagining she might one day find herself in the middle of a real crisis. Something like that, Your Highness. Are you ready for an adventure? I think so. But what about Mother? Queen Isabella answered before Marcus could respond. I'll be right behind you, darling. Captain Vale is simply making sure you're completely safe before we continue. The sound of the crowd outside had grown more intense, with organized chanting that suggested someone was directing their activities through loudspeakers or megaphones. Marcus could see through the tent windows that the demonstration had evolved into something resembling a political rally, with banners and flags creating a wall of color around the festival grounds. Captain, Torres's voice crackled through his earpiece. We've got a problem with those background checks. 2 of your delegation members have false identities. The names they provided don't match any official records, and facial recognition is coming up negative. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Professional operatives with false identities meant this situation was far more serious than a political demonstration that had gotten out of hand. This was a planned operation involving trained personnel with unknown objectives and potentially dangerous capabilities. Torres, contact Palace Security immediately. We may be dealing with a kidnapping attempt or worse. I need backup units and full tactical response authorization. The delegation leader seemed to sense that something had changed in the tense atmosphere. Captain Vale, I hope you're not considering any rash actions. The people outside are very invested in seeing Queen Isabella address their concerns. Who exactly are you people? Queen Isabella asked directly, her royal authority cutting through any pretense of diplomatic courtesy. We are citizens of Ethermore who believe the monarchy has become too isolated from the people it claims to serve, the delegation leader replied, but his answer sounded rehearsed rather than genuine. Marcus made his decision. The priority had to be getting Princess Ilara away from potentially dangerous individuals, even if it meant temporarily leaving Queen Isabella in an uncertain situation. His team could provide backup and support, but first he had to ensure the kingdom's heir was completely safe. Your Majesty, with your permission, I'm going to take Princess Ilara to the secure extraction point now. Torres has additional units surrounding this tent, and they'll maintain your protection while I'm gone. Queen Isabella nodded, though Marcus could see the effort it took for her to maintain composure while watching her daughter being taken away during a crisis. Go. I'll be fine. Marcus knelt down to Princess Ilara's level one more time. Your Highness, we're going to leave through the back entrance of this tent and walk quickly to where our car is waiting. I need you to stay right beside me and follow my instructions exactly. Can you do that? Yes, Captain Vale. Are we going to see Torres and the other guards? Yes. They're waiting for us outside. As Marcus prepared to lead Princess Ilara toward the tent's rear entrance, one of the delegation members moved to block their path. I'm afraid we can't allow any departures until Queen Isabella addresses the crowd. Marcus's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. Step aside immediately. Captain, the delegation leader said calmly, there's no need for violence. We're all reasonable people here. Reasonable people don't hold children hostage for political purposes. No one is being held hostage. We simply want Queen Isabella to demonstrate her commitment to listening to her subjects' concerns. Marcus felt time slowing as he assessed his tactical options. 3 potentially hostile individuals between him and the exit, 1 member of the royal family to protect, and hundreds of protesters outside creating chaos that could provide cover for any number of additional threats. Torres, I need immediate backup at the VIP tent rear entrance. We're encountering resistance to extraction. Copy that, Captain. 2 units moving to your position now. Princess Alara seemed to sense the escalating tension and squeezed Marcus's hand tighter. Captain Vale, should I be scared? Marcus looked down at her serious young face and felt a surge of determination that went beyond professional duty. This child represented not just the future of the monarchy, but the innocence and hope that made his protection role meaningful. No, Your Highness, you should be proud. Today you're showing exactly the kind of courage that great queens possess. The delegation member blocking their path stepped closer, and Marcus could see that despite claims of being unarmed, the man's jacket bulged slightly, in a way that suggested a concealed weapon. Torres, weapons assessment on delegation members. I believe they're armed despite previous statements. Confirmed, Captain. Thermal imaging shows at least 2 individuals carrying concealed firearms. Marcus felt the situation shift into a more dangerous phase. Armed individuals with false identities holding the royal family while surrounded by hundreds of protesters meant this was no longer a political demonstration but a genuine security crisis that could threaten not just the royal family but the stability of the entire kingdom. Queen Isabella seemed to sense the change as well. Gentlemen, I believe this conversation has moved beyond agricultural policy. What do you really want? The delegation leader exchanged glances with his companions before answering. We want you to announce publicly that you're dissolving Parliament and calling for new elections under a revised constitutional framework that gives the monarchy less political influence. Marcus felt the pieces of a larger conspiracy falling into place. This wasn't about farming regulations or environmental policy. This was an attempt to force a constitutional crisis that would fundamentally alter Ethermore's government structure. Your Majesty, he said quietly, under no circumstances should you agree to any of their demands. This appears to be an organized attempt to manipulate the monarchy into triggering a governmental crisis. The crowd outside had grown even louder, with chants now specifically demanding Queen Isabella's appearance on the main stage. Marcus could see through the tent windows that additional vehicles had arrived at the festival perimeter, and more individuals were moving through the crowd in patterns that suggested coordination and planning. Taurus, how many hostile actors are we looking at? Unknown, Captain. We've identified at least 20 individuals throughout the crowd who appear to be working together, but there could be many more. This operation has significant planning and resources behind it. Princess Alara tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Captain Vale, why don't these people just make an appointment to talk to Mother at the palace like everyone else does? Her innocent question highlighted the absurdity of the situation while also demonstrating her understanding that normal diplomatic channels existed for addressing concerns with the monarchy. The delegation leader overheard her question and smiled, though it wasn't a pleasant expression. Because, young princess, sometimes normal channels don't work when people in power don't want to listen. Marcus felt his protective instincts surge at the man's direct address to Princess Alara. Do not speak to her. Captain Vale, Queen Isabella said firmly, I want you to take Princess Alara to safety immediately. That is a direct royal command. The authority in her voice left no room for argument. Marcus had sworn an oath to protect the royal family, and when given a direct command by the Queen, his duty was clear regardless of his personal concerns about leaving her in danger. Yes, Your Majesty. He turned to Princess Alara, speaking with calm confidence despite the chaos surrounding them. Your Highness, it's time for our adventure. Are you ready? Princess Alara nodded, though her eyes kept moving to her mother. Will Mother be safe? Sergeant Torres and the other guards will take very good care of her while we're gone. I promise. As Marcus prepared to move toward the tent's rear entrance with Princess Alara, the delegation leader raised his hand. Captain, I really must insist that no one leaves this tent until Queen Isabella addresses the crowd. Marcus's response was swift and decisive. Then you'll have to stop us. The challenge hung in the air as Marcus began moving toward the exit, Princess Alara's hand firmly in his grasp, while 3 potentially armed individuals positioned themselves between the royal family and safety. The tension in the VIP tent reached a breaking point as Captain Marcus Vale moved deliberately toward the rear entrance, Princess Alara's small hand clasped firmly in his own. The 3 delegation members shifted their positions to form a more effective barrier, Their previous diplomatic pretenses completely abandoned. Captain, the delegation leader said, his voice carrying a new edge of authority. You're making this unnecessarily difficult. No one needs to get hurt today if Queen Isabella simply cooperates with our reasonable request. Marcus kept moving forward, his free hand positioned near his weapon while his eyes tracked all three potential threats simultaneously. Years of protection training had taught him that in situations like this, hesitation could be fatal. Torres, he spoke quietly into his radio. I need that backup at the rear entrance now. 30 seconds, Captain. Princess Alara seemed to sense the gravity of the moment and pressed closer to Marcus's side. Despite her young age, she maintained remarkable composure, trusting completely in his ability to protect her. The sound of approaching footsteps outside the tent's rear entrance brought immediate relief to Marcus as he recognized Sergeant Torres's voice calling out the security team's arrival. The delegation members heard it too, their confident postures wavering as they realized their tactical advantage was about to disappear. This is Torres. We have the rear exit secured. Marcus moved quickly toward the tent flap, but the delegation leader stepped directly into his path. Captain Vale, I cannot allow you to remove the princess from this location. Then you're interfering with royal security, which is a federal crime in Thermore. The man's hand moved toward his jacket, and Marcus reacted instantly. In one fluid motion, he stepped forward, his training taking over as he neutralized the potential threat while simultaneously pushing Princess Alara behind him toward the tent entrance. Torres, we need immediate entry. Weapons confirmed. The rear flap of the tent burst open as Torres and two additional guards rushed in, their weapons drawn and trained on the delegation members. The tactical situation shifted dramatically as the three suspicious individuals found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. Hands visible immediately, Torres commanded. Do not reach for anything. Princess Alara looked up at Marcus with wide eyes but no fear. Captain Vale, are we safe now?
Yes, Your Highness.
Sergeant Torres is here, and we're going to get you to the convoy right away. Queen Isabella rose from her chair, her royal dignity intact despite the chaotic situation. Captain Vale, get my daughter to safety immediately. Sergeant Torres can handle these individuals. Marcus didn't need to be told twice. With the immediate threat neutralized by his team, he could focus entirely on executing Princess Alara's extraction from the festival grounds. Torres, maintain security for Queen Isabella until I return. I'm taking Princess Alara to the convoy now. Copy that, Captain. We'll have this situation contained in 5 minutes. As Marcus led Princess Alara through the secured rear exit, she paused to wave goodbye to her mother. I'll see you soon, Mother. Queen Isabella managed to smile despite the circumstances. I love you, darling. Listen to Captain Vale. The area behind the VIP tent had been cleared by Marcus's security team, creating a protected corridor leading toward the festival administration building, where the convoy waited. However, the sounds from the main festival area indicated that the crowd demonstration was intensifying rather than diminishing. Captain, one of the guards flanking their route reported, the main crowd has grown to approximately 400 people, and they're demanding Queen Isabella's immediate appearance. Local police are having difficulty maintaining crowd control. Marcus acknowledged the report while keeping his focus on getting Princess Alara safely across the 50 yards of open ground between the tent and their extraction point. Despite the chaos surrounding them, she maintained her characteristic resilience. Captain Val, she said as they walked quickly toward the administration building, will this be in the newspapers tomorrow? Cook always reads me the royal news stories with breakfast. Probably, Your Highness. But the newspapers will report that you showed great courage today, just like a true princess should. They reached the administration building without incident, where the royal convoy waited with engines running and additional security personnel positioned at strategic points. Marcus felt a surge of relief as he saw the familiar faces of his most experienced team members ready to ensure Princess Alara's safe journey back to the palace. Sergeant Williams, Marcus called to his second-in-command. Are we clear for immediate departure?
Yes, sir.
Route 7 has been secured, and we have escort vehicles positioned every 2 miles between here and the palace. Estimated travel time, 45 minutes. Marcus helped Princess Alara into the armored vehicle, ensuring she was properly secured before turning to address the tactical situation he was leaving behind. Your Highness, Sergeant Williams will take you directly home where you'll be completely safe. I need to go back and help your mother. Princess Alara nodded solemnly, though her eyes showed concern for her mother's welfare. Captain Vale, please make sure Mother is safe. She was trying to be brave, but I could tell she was worried. I promise, Your Highness. Queen Isabella will be home for dinner tonight. As the convoy prepared to depart, Marcus received an urgent radio transmission from Torres. Captain, We've got a developing situation. Queen Isabella is refusing to leave the festival grounds until she addresses the crowd directly. Marcus felt his heart sink. Queen Isabella's sense of duty to her subjects was one of her greatest strengths as a ruler, but in this situation, it could put her in significant danger. What do you mean she's refusing to leave? She says that running away from citizens with legitimate concerns would damage the monarchy's reputation more than staying and listening to them. She wants to make a brief statement acknowledging their concerns before departing. Marcus found himself facing another impossible decision. Princess Alara was now secure and en route to safety, but Queen Isabella was insisting on taking a significant personal risk to fulfill what she saw as her royal obligations. Tories assessed the crowd mood. Is there any way to safely facilitate a brief royal statement? Unknown, Captain. The crowd includes legitimate festival attendees who are confused and concerned, mixed with organized protesters whose intentions remain unclear. Making Queen Isabella visible to that size group carries substantial risk. The radio crackled with additional reports from security teams positioned throughout the festival grounds. The situation was becoming more complex as local media had arrived and were broadcasting live coverage of the demonstration, turning what had been a contained security incident into a public relations crisis for the monarchy. Princess Alara's convoy departed for the palace, leaving Marcus to focus entirely on Queen Isabella's safety. However, as he prepared to return to the VIP tent, Torres transmitted an update that changed everything. Captain, Queen Isabella has left the tent and is walking toward the main stage area. She's accompanied by 2 of our guards, but she's determined to address the crowd directly. Marcus ran toward the main festival area, his mind racing through tactical options for protecting the Queen in an open, uncontrolled environment surrounded by hundreds of potentially hostile individuals. The scene that greeted him was unlike anything he had experienced in 20 years of royal protection duty. Queen Isabella stood at the base of the festival's main stage, surrounded by a massive crowd that pressed close enough to touch her. Despite the obvious danger, she maintained her characteristic composure while listening to individual concerns from people in the front rows. "Your Majesty," Marcus called as he pushed through the crowd to reach her side. "This is not a secure environment for public interaction." Queen Isabella looked up at him with absolute determination. "Captain Vale, these are my people. If they have concerns that bring them this far to express, then I have an obligation to listen." The crowd around them included a mix of genuine festival attendees, concerned farmers, and organized protesters, making it impossible to distinguish between legitimate subjects and potential threats. Marcus positioned himself directly beside the Queen while his security team formed a protective perimeter around the immediate area. "Citizens of Athermore," Queen Isabella began, her voice carrying clearly across the crowd, "I understand that many of you have concerns about recent policy decisions, and I want you to know that your voices have been heard today." The crowd gradually quieted as people strained to hear their Queen's words. Marcus continued scanning for potential threats while admiring Queen Isabella's ability to command attention and respect even in such chaotic circumstances. The Environmental Conservation Act was developed with input from agricultural experts specifically to protect both our natural heritage and our farming communities. However, if there are specific provisions that create unexpected hardships, I encourage you to work with the Ministry of Agriculture to address those concerns through proper channels. A voice from the crowd called out, "Your Majesty, will you personally review the impact assessments before the law is implemented?" Queen Isabella paused thoughtfully before responding. "I will personally ensure that the Ministry of Agriculture conducts additional review of any provisions that may disproportionately affect small farming operations. Your concerns today have made it clear that more dialogue is needed before final implementation." Marcus noticed that the crowd's mood was shifting from confrontational to respectful, as Queen Isabella demonstrated genuine attention to their concerns while maintaining appropriate constitutional boundaries. Her natural ability to connect with people was turning a potential crisis into an opportunity for positive royal citizen interaction. However, Marcus also noticed several individuals throughout the crowd who were speaking urgently into radios or cell phones, suggesting that other elements were still working to manipulate the situation. "Torres," he spoke quietly, "maintain surveillance on those individuals with communication devices. I want to know if anyone is trying to escalate this situation." After 10 more minutes of direct interaction with crowd members, Queen Isabella concluded her impromptu audience. "Thank you all for your passion and your concerns. This is exactly the kind of citizen engagement that makes Athermore a strong democracy. I encourage you to continue working through proper channels to ensure your voices are heard." The crowd responded with respectful applause rather than continued protest chants. Queen Isabella's willingness to listen and her promise of additional policy review had addressed their primary concerns while maintaining the constitutional framework that prevented monarchs from making policy decisions under public pressure. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus finally allowed himself to believe that the crisis was truly over. Queen Isabella had navigated an impossible situation with the wisdom and grace that had made her beloved by the people of Ethermore, while he and his team had successfully protected both members of the royal family from what could have been a dangerous confrontation. "Your Majesty," Marcus said as they walked back toward the convoy, "that was extraordinary. You turned a potential disaster into a demonstration of exactly why the monarchy remains relevant in modern Ethermore." Queen Isabella smiled, though Marcus could see the exhaustion behind her composed exterior. "Captain Vale, thank you for protecting Elara and for trusting my judgment about addressing the crowd. Sometimes the most dangerous action is the safest choice." As they reached the convoy for the journey home, Marcus reflected on the day's events. The crisis had tested every aspect of his training and judgment, but ultimately, the combination of professional security protocols and royal wisdom had protected both the monarchy and the democratic principles it served. Princess Elara would be waiting at the palace with stories of her own adventure, while Queen Isabella had once again demonstrated why the people of Ethermore trusted her leadership even in the most challenging circumstances. The Harvest Festival would be remembered not for the political demonstration that threatened to overshadow it, but for the Queen's gracious response to her subjects' concerns and her daughter's remarkable courage during their greatest test yet.